Sharon gave me a nasty look after I said I was quitting, but I just looked back at her calmly without saying a word. We had been talking about the company trying to save money by cutting labor costs. They were especially upset about people supposedly taking advantage of overtime. Gary also seemed happy about the idea of cutting expenses. A week later, the company kept calling me. When I finally picked up, the president asked sharply, "Who are you, exactly?" I couldn't help but laugh a little at the question. Then I introduced myself, Angela Johnson, 59 years old, with 37 years of loyal service since I graduated from college. I explained that our company provides office support for busy company presidents. We take care of paperwork and focus on tax-related work. I proudly managed 45 clients, even with a part-time helper. It was a lot to handle, but I couldn't show I was struggling. Our clients had been with us for a long time, and I felt a strong duty to help them, especially when they were going through hard times. Now, as I sat in front of my computer, I couldn't stop thinking about how Gary and Sharon had been treating me. Gary, who is 7 years younger and now leads the tax department, started acting very differently after his promotion 3 months ago. He used to be polite, but now he talks down to me and complains constantly, even when I tried to stand up for myself. He told me to check the manual and warned me not to do anything unnecessary. Sharon, who works under Gary, joined in too. She made fun of how fast I worked and treated me like I was just a regular employee, not knowing I had actually turned down a promotion to department head in the past. I kept doing my regular work, but their bullying didn't stop. Gary blamed me for working too much overtime and said it was wasteful. Sharon agreed and said my overtime was hurting the whole department. The reason I'd been working so much overtime lately was because Gary suddenly dumped a whole month's worth of client files on my desk. He told me they had to be finished by the end of the month. After work, I looked at the huge stack and felt the color drain from my face. "Wait, all of these are due this month?" I said, confused and overwhelmed. Before I could say anything more, Gary was already packing up his things, not even bothering to respond. "I'm heading out. Good luck," he said casually, walking out the door and leaving me with all the urgent work. Sharon followed him and let out a mocking laugh on her way out. I stared at the files on my desk in disbelief and let out a long sigh. As I looked through them, I noticed that some of the files were actually Sharon's responsibility. That made me sigh even more. Then it hit me, Gary and Sharon were trying to push me out. They wanted me to quit. Because of my long experience and deep knowledge of taxes, other employees in the department often came to me for help instead of Gary. He didn't like that. On top of that, Gary's cold attitude and unappealing personality made people avoid him, except for Sharon. She stuck close to him, probably because he preferred working with younger women. The whole situation felt petty and shallow, and it made me feel uneasy. Sharon's constant bullying wasn't just personal, she was trying to win Gary's approval. He was the one in charge of judging the tax department's performance. Even with all this going on, I still had to finish the client declarations and prepare tax documents for my own assigned companies. There was still a lot to do, and the day wasn't over, but if I logged overtime, Gary and Sharon would just complain, so I braced myself to work late without getting paid for it. Just then, I got a message. I was being called to the president's office. Our company had recently gotten a new president after the old one suddenly became ill. The new president, his son, didn't know much about the company yet. When I walked into the office, I saw Gary and Sharon smirking. The mood was tense. Then the president said something shocking. "Angela, we need you to resign by the end of this month." I was stunned and asked what he meant. He explained that Gary and Sharon had accused me of overcharging for overtime. While most people had around 15 hours, I had more than 80. The president didn't know the full story and seemed impressed that Gary and Sharon had no overtime at all. The truth was, I worked so many extra hours because I was doing Gary and Sharon's work too, but if I said that out loud, it might just look like I couldn't manage my time. I calmly told the president that I hadn't lied about my hours, I simply had too much work to finish during normal hours. The president sighed and said he didn't know what to believe, but since there wasn't any clear proof, they couldn't investigate. Still, he thought I was too slow and said the company couldn't keep someone like that. It was clear he had already decided. I agreed to resign at the end of the month, reminding him I had already told him about my plan to leave. Gary and Sharon looked pleased, their faces full of smug satisfaction. As I walked out, Sharon sneered, "Thanks for quitting," with a mocking smile. I stared at her silently. Gary gave me the same cold look, saying the company had to cut costs and called me someone who abused overtime pay. I watched them chatting happily as I thought about handing over my work. I carefully made documents for each of my clients and said goodbye to those I could meet in person. I couldn't get a meeting with the president, so I wrote letters explaining who would take over for me. A week after I quit, I was at home finally enjoying some rest when my phone rang. It was the company. I hesitated, my insurance paperwork was already done, but they kept calling from both the office and Gary and Sharon's personal numbers. I finally answered. The president sounded panicked. Who exactly are you? He asked. I replied sarcastically, just an unemployed woman who used to work at your company. He explained, in a worried voice, that 49 clients had called to cancel their contracts. He begged me to come back right away. Sighing, I stood up and returned to the office. When I arrived, Gary and Sharon were waiting. Their faces were pale, with dark circles under their eyes. I was shocked at how much they had changed in just a week. I asked what was going on. Gary gave me a hard glare and said, "Since you left, we've been flooded with calls to stop business, not just from your clients, but also from companies we were planning to work with. What did you do?" Sharon added to the accusation, clearly upset, suggesting I must have done something sneaky. They both looked tired, clearly worn out from dealing with all the cancellations. I hadn't told clients to cancel, but I had a feeling why it was happening. I quietly shared my thoughts, thinking out loud. Gary didn't believe me. He accused me of planning the whole thing and ordered me to go to the president's office. He even grabbed my arm and marched me there. Inside the president's office, the president looked at me seriously. Gary stepped forward and said, "President, I brought her." Acting like he was in charge, Sharon rushed in behind him. The president ignored their tone and asked me calmly why so many transactions had stopped after I left. I took a deep breath and said, "Clients didn't stay with us because they needed tax help, they stayed because of me. There are cheaper tax firms out there, but I gave them personal attention and advice they trusted." Gary immediately snapped at me, questioning if I really thought I was that important. Sharon joined in, mocking me too. I stayed calm and explained that I didn't just follow a manual. I gave each client advice that matched their specific needs, which helped them save money. That's why they stayed. Gary waved it off, saying that kind of approach was inefficient, and their way, sticking to the manual, was better. The president let out a long sigh. Then he said something that surprised us all. "My father, the former president, called me. Some of the clients who canceled went to him directly. They asked him to speak on your behalf. I didn't expect that. Clients had taken the extra step to stand up for me." The former president told his son that the tax department had done well because of my work. I managed my clients well and even helped with others' clients. I knew more about the job than Gary did. He also said that if I hadn't turned down a promotion years ago, I would have been in a position even higher than department head. The new president looked regretful. Sharon looked shocked, maybe realizing I could have been her boss. Then the president apologized for pushing me to resign and asked if I would consider coming back. He said his father believed I was essential to the company. I appreciated the apology, but I wasn't sure what to say yet. Before I could answer, Gary burst out angrily, asking why I was being chosen over him. Sharon backed him up, saying Gary was a good leader and didn't understand why I was being praised. The president then firmly told them that ever since I left, he had received many complaints from others in the department, saying that Gary and Sharon had been passing their work on to other people. Gary's face went pale when the president exposed that he had been pushing his own client work onto others, including making them do Sharon's work too. The president pointed out the irony of this, since Gary had once called me a salary thief. Seeing both Gary and Sharon go silent and pale, the president went on to mention a rumor. Someone had reported that the two of them were in a romantic relationship. Gary tried to defend himself, saying he was only mentoring Sharon as her boss, but the president showed receipts from the accounting department. Gary had claimed dining expenses that suggested otherwise. With sweat on his forehead, Gary couldn't come up with a good excuse. Sharon also looked terrified when the president accused them of not doing their jobs properly, lying about expenses, and breaking company rules by having an affair at work, especially since they were both married. Staying calm, the president announced that both of them were being fired on the spot. Gary and Sharon panicked. They begged to keep their jobs, saying they'd fix the receipt claims. "I have a family," Gary pleaded. Sharon also begged, saying she was scared of being fired and promised to apologize to everyone for dumping her work on others. Worried about her image and the affair being public, she begged for one more chance. I watched them, then said, "Why don't you stop fighting it? It's embarrassing." Gary glared at me and snapped, "Shut up, what would a single woman like you know?" I sighed and said, "Gary, you're the one who got me fired. This is just karma. Maybe it's time you own up to what you did." Gary looked away angrily. Sharon bit her lip, trying not to cry. Knowing more about what they'd done, I turned to the president and calmly asked if he'd like me to share everything. Gary and Sharon panicked, begging me not to say anything else. I warned them, the truth always comes out eventually. You should stop pretending and deal with it before it gets worse. At that, both of them dropped to their knees. The president, seeing their reaction, made it official. They were fired on the spot. Later, I told the president even more, Gary had faked business trips to secretly spend days with Sharon, and together, they bullied coworkers they didn't like until those people quit. Even though I tried to help those coworkers, Gary and Sharon kept assigning them last-minute tasks and unfair deadlines behind my back. Those employees had once asked me to stay quiet, but now that they were happy in new jobs, I decided it was time to speak up. The president was furious. He said he'd cut Gary and Sharon's final pay and investigate all their past expenses. Gary, now crying, begged the president not to cut his pay, saying his family would suffer. As everything came out, it was revealed that Gary's affair with Sharon led to a divorce. Now, both of them face a lawsuit and may have to pay compensation, proof that their actions finally caught up with them. I found out about their situation when Gary contacted me, asking if I could help convince the president to give them their jobs back. Gary and Sharon were in big trouble. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't find new jobs in the tax field. Because everyone in the industry talked to each other, news about what they did spread fast, companies didn't want to hire them. Needing money for their divorce costs and living expenses, they ended up doing hard labor work at construction sites, very different from their old office jobs. Sharon often called me, crying and asking for help. "Angela, please help me, I only wanted a better life, and I never really liked Gary," she said through tears. But I couldn't forget that they were in this mess because of their own choices. A lot of people, including me, had been hurt by what they did. I told Sharon firmly, "You can't undo what's been done, you have to face the results of your actions." Sharon begged and cried, but no matter how sorry she was, things couldn't be changed. As for me, I decided to stay away from all the company drama. Even though the president asked me to come back, I said no. Once they made me resign, I didn't want to go back. Instead, I found peace helping out at a friend's tax office. It gave me extra money and a more relaxed life. I started thinking about opening my own tax office someday, where I could work freely without company rules. I wanted to help my clients as equals, without acting like I was better than them. This was the start of a new chapter in my life, one full of hope and chances to do what really mattered. My second life was just beginning, and I looked forward to the journey ahead.